I used to find the story of Peter Pan quite magical when I was young. A little boy trapped in time, always to be a little boy, whose adventures were with pirates and fairies and mermaids. Nowadays, my memories of the story are tinged with a little sadness, and that's because we too, as a family, have our own Peter Pan, a little girl trapped in an adult's body, always to be a little girl. A little girl living her days in a never-ending childhood does have some magic about it, and despite the sadness, there are days when I can see that innocence and purity are qualities to be cherished. I wrote this reflection a few weeks ago on the way home from Pembrokeshire in Wales, following 10 days holiday with our daughter Emma, who lives at Russell House at Chalfont, who has severe epilepsy, severe learning difficulties, and who's 37 years old. The tiger who came to tea had played a prominent role in the holiday, and for those of you who know the story, every day we had been asking ourselves whether the tiger would come back again tomorrow, quite lost in the world of Sophie and her tiger food. I'm sure that other relatives from the Epilepsy Society can relate to my analogy of Peter Pan, because I think that many of us see our loved ones as those children, affectionate, lovable, and even mischievous, who are trapped in time, not because they have lost their shadows, but because they are trapped by their epilepsy or their autism or their brain injuries, which have resulted in cognitive impairments so serious that, despite their adult bodies, their minds remain childlike. But if it was a fairy tale that our loved ones were living in, well, perhaps they still would be playing in enchanted woods. But no, they are living in reality, in everyday life, in a society that seems to be governed by political correctness and a pressure for conformity to the norms of a society which, despite its multiculturalism and diversity, still seems to have expectations that people with a wide range of additional needs somehow need to slot into. This can result in an expectation that our people, with all their challenges, should be leading a so-called more stereotypical adult life. And sometimes in care homes, this might translate into a package of more sedentary activities which suit the elderly more than the young, such as sitting in a living room with a television always on, or playing bingo in the rec hall, or sitting dozing in an armchair whilst outside the sun is shining. Age-appropriate activities might be the expected, but are they really feeding the minds and imagination of the people in care homes who still have youth and energy on their side, who perhaps would prefer a game of football, a computer game, or the noise and excitement of a pop concert? It sometimes crosses my mind that as relatives we too have been trapped in time. I'm reminded of this when I'm still changing the same nappies 37 years on, whilst most parents can jump for joy after 2 or 3 years when nappy years are done with. It crosses my mind too when filling a Christmas stocking or singing a nursery rhyme. I feel a real connoisseur after 37 years. But whilst in such ways we are caught up in time, in other ways time is rolling past fast for us all, and as we become older, I believe our anxieties increase. We worry a lot for our loved ones living here. We worry about their mental health, their physical health, their social well-being, their daily fulfillment, their nutrition, their medication, their personal care, drug shortages, and so the list goes on. We worry more because the older we become, the more we know we have to leave our loved ones in the care of support workers, many of whom are strangers to our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters. We lie awake worrying whether they really understand the nature of their seizures or how to manage their behaviour challenges. We worry because many of our people have no voice or little voice to express their own worries. And so just as we've always done since they were babies, we do their worrying for them. We worry most when there's a shortage of permanent staff, as there is currently at the Epilepsy Society, because our care staff are the most important people to us as relatives, and knowing we have good staff allows us to relax in the knowledge the best possible care is being given on the houses. We all expect so much of support staff, and it is really uplifting to see all those who do such a fantastic job. But that is why we can sometimes be so disappointed when visiting our loved ones in their houses, especially on a weekend, when we can be faced by a sea of strangers in the house. Sometimes it feels as if the hours are just passing. Sometimes there's just a living room and a television on, and dozing residents and silent staff. I have to hold in my frustration at such a time because I know how simple it can be to create a little adventure, a little fun and laughter, a little enchantment with a few props and a little imagination. A football, a game of bowls, a frisbee, a makeshift tent and a picnic in the garden. But I know solutions to this problem are by no means straightforward, and all the stakeholders involved have their own parts to play. But as stakeholders too, this is where as relatives we can sometimes see conflicting priorities. On any one day, whilst Emma may be dreaming of the tiger's return, I may be worrying whether her teeth have been cleaned properly. The trustees may be monitoring important quality assurance documentation. The chief executive may be agonising over financial prudence. The director of care may be focused on gaining his CQC compliance. Our registered managers focused on preparation for a forthcoming inspection. And everyone may be racking their brains on new ways forward for recruitment and retention. All of us may be reading nationally that care services are in crisis and awaiting decisions from government on sorting out this funding crisis. Meanwhile, funding authorities continue to feel strapped for cash, want value for money every way they turn, and charities continue to have to cut services, pay more money for agency staff, while some support staff continue to feel both underpaid and undervalued. So hopefully the bigger picture is being taken care of. Others are worrying about all those important strategic issues. But peeling back all those worries and getting to the very core of them, it's Emma's worry of whether the tiger will return. And as a relative, from my perspective, that becomes the most important worry of all. I depend completely on the care staff here to help her with her worries. And sometimes all the other stakeholders with all their huge worries just need a gentle reminder of who is at the very centre of everything they're trying to sort out. Our loved ones, the ones we care about most. And what we care about is that each day they live at the Epilepsy Society is a day worth living. So whatever decisions those in charge are taking strategically, they have to be mindful of the impact these decisions have on our people who live here. Shortages of permanent staff, lack of drivers and transport, insufficient outings and activities off-site, all have a negative impact on people's lives. It's what we all spend a lot of time worrying about. But despite so much challenge on a wider perspective, I believe that fulfillment for our loved ones can come in other ways too. This takes me back to what I said at the beginning. Many people living here still have childlike minds and childlike needs, despite their adult ages. And I believe that some of these needs can be met quite simply. And I don't think that Epilepsy Society has got this part right yet. It's about a shift in culture, a different emphasis on the training program for support staff, which skills up everyone who works here to be able to deliver some of the simple pleasures of life, which can bring so much satisfaction on a daily basis. Yes, they must be cared for first and foremost, but a good life isn't just about being cared for. We all know the pleasure of a story being shared, of music being played, of puzzles and arts and crafts on the dining room table, of songs and musical instruments, of picnics on the lawn, of walks on windy days. And to come back to my early analogy, our Peter Pans deserve and need some fun, some laughter, some magic, and just a few spoonfuls of imagination. At the end of each day, they need to go to bed both physically and mentally tired because they've been busy and enjoyed their days. We need our care staff to understand and be skilled in feeding the minds of our children as well as feeding their bodies. And then as relatives, we can all relax more in the knowledge that this increased stimulation can help reduce boredom, which in turn can reduce seizures, with the outcome of improved mental health. And none of this costs a penny. Who says that in the midst of a crisis, a simple solution can't be found?